Good evening and welcome to another exciting programme. First of all, I must apologise for last Thursday because I was really cream crackered. I've been working on quite a extensive project and it seems to destroy the brain cells, or I've been using them up too much. But anyway, I've decided to change the show to Mondays instead of Thursdays for two reasons. One is to avoid the people that like to celebrate low IQ Pride Day by acting as performing seals, which last Thursday they didn't. And secondly, on Thursdays I tend to clash with a lot of other people doing live programs. So hopefully tonight, Mondays, I don't think I'll be clashing with anybody, unless you know differently, of course. So if I am, please tell me. Well, tonight I'm going to be covering quite a few topics, as well as the odd one out competition and a few dirty gags. I'm going to be covering what we can do on a positive note with the New World Order, peacefully, lawfully, and with a bit of a laugh. And then I'm hoping to discuss the Vietnam War and something strange that happened in the American, Australian and British governments, and also an alternative D-Day remembrance on this well, it was last Saturday, the 6th of June, anniversary. I don't know if you call it an anniversary or commemoration, but as you may or may not know, my father was one of the first in on D-Day on major assault waves on Gold Beach Jig section, adjacent to where the film, I hasten to add, the fiction film Saving Private Ryan is depicted. And my sister bought my father a video of Saving Private Ryan, and we had to switch it off because he kept saying whoever advised Spielberg wasn't there, because he said that's wrong. But I'll be going on to that a little bit later. But first of all, last Thursday I did a very, very short video explaining that the day had actually changed when I'm doing this live show, and I did an odd one out competition, and here it is. What one is the odd one out? And I've actually got the banner this time, and for some unknown reason it didn't come up last time. The banner I'm talking about. Now, which one is the odd one out? Face masks, number one. Number two, excuse me, it's not coughing. Must have a glug. That's better. Vitamins C and D. 3, isolation. Whoops, I almost said self-masturbation there, didn't I? Self-isolation. And 4, 2-meter distancing. Now, I'm sure you jolly nice people won't look at, whilst I'm speaking here, of course, at last week's short video that I did on Thursday, because 2 people have actually got the right answer. And that was, who was it now? Cider Guy and Adrian. So you won't cheat and look at the comment section, will you? No. But I think most of you have probably got it already. So odd one out: face masks, vitamin C and D, self-isolation and 2-meter distancing. Anyway, I'll just let you ponder that for the moment. And I might have another odd one out tonight, so we'll see how we're going. So do a bit of head scratching, Oh, hang on, I think we've got someone in chat already, have we? Hello, Stewie. Greetings. I'm glad you could join me on Mondays. Please tell me if you prefer Mondays to Thursdays. I mean, if I get a big thumbs up for Mondays, I will carry on Mondays. But if I get a big thumbs down for Mondays, I go back to Thursdays. And it's funny, last Thursday, I had a bit of trouble with my car. The battery decided to die, and I was very worried about Tesco's profits. So I decided to sort of help them out a bit and go down there and contribute a little bit of my money, i.e. Go shopping. And I jumped in my car, turned the ignition, it went, the battery had actually died. So I said, oh dear, what a shame. Not exactly in those terms. But anyway, even though I got a solar charger on it, I think what had happened is one of the wires had come loose on the solar charger, and it actually wasn't charging. So anyway, cut a long story sideways, I was outside fiddling around with my car at 8 o'clock last Thursday, and thinking that I'd see lots of performing sills for low IQ Pride Day, and no, none of them were there. So I want to, between you and I want to see what neighbours were thick enough to do it, but none of them were. Anyway, let's have a look what we got here. Oh, hello, Squirrel Girl. Hello, Ralph. Oh, I've changed my name again. Right, now back to the competition. Here we go. Right. Oh, still got this damn hay fever. Odd one out. Face masks, vitamins C and D, self-masturbation, self-isolation, or 2 metre distancing. And as I say, 2 of you have already got it. Adrian and Sadiga have already got it. That was because I read this out on Thursday when I did a brief video explaining that I'm going to change the days and I wasn't going to go on Thursday. Well, let's see. Anybody getting the answer? Let's have a look. Where are we? Oh, Monday nights are very popular on my feed. Oh, that's good. Goody. But anyway, as I say, I think it's better on Mondays, actually. Because as I say, Thursday I seem to clash with a lot of people. I know Ben's on Thursday, and I clash with him. On the programme, I mean, I don't clash with Ben generally. And I think a few others are as well. So I think Caroline is as well. Now, Squirrel Girl 2. We've certainly got a lot of bright people in chat, haven't we? We certainly have. I'm really proud of the audience I've got for this show because they're really sharp. Okay, you got the right answer. Yes, it's vitamin C and D, because all the other 3 are part of what I believe to be the psyops. I mean, face masks. First of all, if you go on to Dr. Coleman, or if you go onto YouTube and tap in Vernon Coleman, he does regular videos and he's brilliant. And I don't know if he's mentioned anything about face masks. I think he did. But I know there's a load of real doctors who are talking about face masks, and you're breathing in your waste, and it's not good for you. And I think it's, well, the only time I wear a face mask is if I'm spraying cellulose paint, because I don't particularly want to breathe in cellulose paint. But I'll be straight with you. I mean, I've got one of these industrial masks where you put a canister in it. And after about 10 minutes, I'm feeling a bit woozy and headachy. And I really don't like it. And strangely enough, last year when I came off my push bike, I'm stupid fault, it's all wet leaves, and I just had to cycle round someone, went over the wet leaves, went straight over, and of course it was a very cold day, and I had a face mask. When I say face mask, I had a sort of scarf wrapped around my face, and I got up immediately, cycled on, and then fainted, and I think I must have knocked myself out because I hadn't given myself time to get over the shock of falling over, because I did hurt myself quite badly. But anyway, that's all in the past. But I really do think that having a scarf around my face stopped the normal amount of oxygen and air, rather, going down into my lungs. And that's why, mainly because I obviously had fallen over and hadn't got over the shock. And secondly, if I'd have had more oxygen going into my lungs, I don't think I would have fainted. So from now on, I'm never, if I'm cycling, going to put something over my face. That's it. So face masks, I think that people wearing face masks driving a car is an accident waiting to happen. You know, it's unbelievably ridiculous. Self-isolation, well, let's face it, your immune system needs to be in practice, needs to have good exercise. And, you know, as George Carlin said, when he was a kid, he used to swim in the Hudson River, and they used to pump sewage into the Hudson River, and it was full of crap. And there was a polio outbreak in where he was, and his district didn't get it. Why? Because the children used to swim in the Hudson River and their immune systems were super efficient. And I think if you isolate from people, your immune system will get a little bit lax. And I think that when these people come out of this self-isolation, they'll be going down with every virus, cold and ailment you can ever wish to think of. And of course, the 2 meters distancing is straight out the Frankfurt School and Tavistock Centre. It's to do with a PSYOP, and psychologically it wears you down, and it's to control people. And of course, vitamins C and D, which is the correct answer, well, it's been proven to be excellent fight against viruses. I was listening to, what was it now? Don't think it was Dr. Coleman, but it was I wish I could make a note of it now. And this doctor was saying that, sorry, I'm not a hypochondriac. I don't generally tune into doctors, only tune into them when they're talking about this fake demic. I'll be careful what I say there. And he was saying that by December, our vitamin D has literally run down to the lowest, and I'm talking about the northern hemisphere, not the southern hemisphere. And in the places like Finland and Sweden, where they take vitamin D normally, less people go down with the flu. So it's worth thinking about, isn't it? So the Nordic countries. And you notice that if the government really cared about our health, they would be telling us to eat green leafy vegetables and taking vitamin C and D supplements. But they're not, are they? Because they don't give a shit about our health. Right, now let's see what we've got in chat. Hello, Wattle and Dolb. Been watching Vernon. Yep, he's good, isn't he? I like his sense of humour as well. Do you see that one? What he's doing about we can carry the virus on our feet? Oh, it's a classic, that one is. It crack you up. Now we've got Squirrel Girl here. Why do we, from 15 to 6:20, have to wear masks on public transport? Yet the police could all squash into their van together, but do not have to wear one. Yeah, good point. Good point. Well, I try and avoid public transport generally, like the plague. I hate public transport. But that's a very good point. But hang on, let's take this banner off. Where are we? Here we go. But I saw a girl on Facebook the other day. It was brilliant. She got, you know, that sort of lace curtaining type thing. She put it over her mouth like this. It was open, and she said, I think she's Australian. She said, I'll go around like this, and nobody's where you have to wear a mask. She said, I put this on, and it's just, you can breathe straight through it. And it's just sort of like a sort of ladies see-through knickers, you know, that type of thing. She said, nobody's complained, because it's like a cult. It's sort of ceremonial, isn't it, really? I mean, what the face mask is supposed to do, I do not know. They say it's to stop you sneezing over people. Well, I don't sneeze over people anyway. And my local council sent out a leaflet which said you should use your cuff if you haven't got a handkerchief. If I'd have done that when I was a kid, I think my parents would have gone absolutely doolally. Use your cuff. Ugh. Anyway, now for the first part of the show. Now, you go onto YouTube and Facebook, you got lots of people saying, excuse me a moment, No, they don't say, excuse me one moment. They say, what's happening, next year is going to be this, we're going to go into a recession, we're doing this, doing that, blah, 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 blah. All depression, what the New World Order has got planned for us, United Nations Agenda 2030, genocide agenda, wiping out 55 million people from the United Kingdom alone, and all that. But the big problem is the New World Order has a plan. We don't. And in life, for example, my work, if somebody asks me to design something, I have an idea in my mind what the finish item is going to be like. I have a plan. And if the client wants some, I don't know, fancy whatever, staircase or something, I'd draw up a brief and show that to the client and say, well, is that what you want? And they say yes. But I'd have an objective to work to. So for example, at the moment I'm repairing a brick wall which blew over in a gale. I hasten to add, not a brick wall that I had actually built, at the top of my garden. Part of it had blown over, and I'm repairing it. Now, I'm repairing it, but my objective is to finish it, and I've got a clear view in my mind of what the finished job is going to look like. And whenever you do anything, there is an objective to work to, but nobody seems to have an objective. And that is where the New World Order is scoring over us, because we outnumber the New World Order by millions, billions, in fact. And as Henry Ford said, if people knew how the banking system really worked, there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning. 100% true. And he also said if people knew the truth, there'd be a revolution before tomorrow morning. But it's because people believe lies that this carries on. Now, I think this country is subjected to ideological subversion, and has been since the 1930s, when the former Soviet Union wanted to infiltrate the West. So what can we do in a way that can actually turn the situation on its head? Now, for example, the government are using statistical and social scientists, not, in my view, real scientists. They're using the type of scientists who a couple of generations ago would have been laughed at. Now they're into a position of authority, and we're not laughing now, are we? Now, ideological subversion is, as I've said many times before, if you go on to Yuri Bezmenov on YouTube, he'll explain it far better than I can. But it's basically not, you've got an enemy, you don't put a force in front of it. So when you see these stupid people protesting in front of the police, oh, I've got more rights and all this. No. You should use this. Use our brains. And I believe using, and I've said this many times before, counter subversion. And subversion really is like a fist coming along. Now, to put your hand in front of someone hitting you is a very stupid thing to do. You get knocked out. But if you grab this force and push it into the direction you want it to go, that is really subversion. It's like, I mean, I've never done judo, but apparently in judo, you get someone who's about to knock 9 bells of crap out of you. They'll come with all the force towards you, and you don't stand in the way, you help them, and you smash them into a wall. Now, my father during World War II, he learnt unarmed combat, and they were trained in unarmed combat. And I'll never forget when I was a kid, he said, I think I had a broomstick. He said, come to me with it. My uncle did this as well, because my uncle was with my father during the war. Come towards me with that broomstick. So I said, hey, no, he said, come towards me. And I lunged towards him, and within a split second, I was on the floor. Bang! And it was automatic with him. And I'll never forget when I was very much younger, I think it was in the 70s, my dad worked in London, and he was going down, I think it was Euston Underpass, and there was about 4 youths that lied him up and down to mug him, and it was quite empty, and the youth looked at him, and they said, let him go, let him go. And my dad said, and he wasn't bragging, he's not the type of person to show off or anything like that, he said, if they had attacked him, it would have been automatic, what his training was in the army. And he said it's doubtful if a couple of them would have been able to have children afterwards. He said, you know, and but main emphasis was to use the person's force to pull them off balance. And my dad had this incredible thing. He kind of twisted. My uncle did this. You would, if you went towards him with a broomstick, obviously jokingly, he would twist it, and he would, you know, and it was split second. It was, and he said he didn't think about it because he'd been trained and trained and trained and trained to do it. And this was when he was, and he could still do it when he was in his 70s. You know, it was sort of inbred into them how to defend yourself, unarmed combat. Now, the point I'm actually getting at is that protests and things like that, yes, they do something, but they don't really work. So what I was thinking, let's use what the Tavistock and Frankfurt School, their subversion, you turn it back on them, what they've done on us. Now, you notice in history, for example, during World War II, sorry, rather a World War II theme tonight, isn't it? The Russians, or Soviets rather, were being pushed back and back and back by the German forces. I think it was Gough studied blitzkrieg, and this was lightning wars, is what the Germans did, and he studied every aspect of what the Germans did and how they did it. And then he got the Soviet forces to do the equivalent of blitzkrieg, and the German forces wondered what the hell had hit them. Now, throughout history, you find that you copy what your enemy does and push it back at them. And as the bloke said in Dad's Army, they don't like it up them. Now, for example, if you notice, they're using the words community and pride days. So why can't we have a pride day of low IQ Pride Day? Or we could have 2020 International Year of Low IQ Pride, and you could sort of praise the government for helping people from the moron community. Now you think about it, you know, they're educated twits who, as I say, several generations ago, would not be advising governments. They would probably, in the Victorian times, be put into a mental institution. Or in fact, when you look at Darwinism, I don't think they would have actually been born. But why can't we do the same back? So, for instance, when you see these police getting down on one knee, and you get these, I've seen girls on Facebook, apparently they've been shaving their hair off because of this Black Lives Matter. So I think we could have our own one, people low IQ matters, or morons matter. And you could thank these people for doing their contribution to low IQ Pride Day. And for example, if you wear a mask whilst driving your car alone in a car, you are showing low IQ pride. So you can congratulate them. But okay, be nice and polite. Local council, for example, they sent a leaflet round, or a booklet, all printed on glossy, thick paper, telling you to watch the BBC, and I covered that a couple of weeks ago, and cuff your nose if you haven't got a handkerchief, and don't sneeze over people, and don't wash your hands. So I'm thinking of writing to them and congratulating them for doing their bit for low IQ pride, for the moron community. And of course, if you're from the because remember, they always like to put you into a little pigeonhole. If you're from the moron community, why not put a rainbow poster in the window of your house so that people can then speak to the people that are the low IQ pride people slowly and not use any word longer than marmalade because it would confuse them. And of course, you could give them a copy of one of Rupert Murdoch's comics, such as The Sun or The Times. So we can have a lot of fun with this. So I invented this low IQ Pride Day. So just wonder what you think about that. And we could sort of expand upon it, you know. And again, copy what the Tavistock and Frankfurt School has done to us. Counter, subvert, bring it along, help them, but always be polite within the law and have a laugh and just show the stupidity of it. Because that's one thing the New World Order haven't got, a sense of humour, and that's what we've got. And I think that's what we can hit back with. So we need to have a plan. I mean, I'd like to wake up one morning and hear that Bill Gates and most of the Rothschilds involved in finances are in handcuffs in jail, and they're facing charges of fraud. And also most of the people in the World Health Organization and the British Medical Association that has now been populated by supporters of low IQ pride, the moron community. And I'd like to see them, as I say, facing justice with a non-Masonic judge, which would be quite interesting. And that's another thing we could actually aim for. And that is ban anybody in public office to make it illegal for them to be a member of a secret organisation, such as the Masons. People can join the Masons as long as they're not in public office, because they make a decision and a choice to work in public office. But if they're found to be a member of a secret organisation and in public office, that is a conflict of interest. So I think that is something, I mean, I don't like loads of laws and this, that and the other, but I think that's something that's very, very important. We do actually need that sort of thing. So be quite interested to hear what you think of Low IQ Pride Day. Now let's have a look. I think the old trolls are going to have a field day with that one. Let's have a look, see if we've got any comments. Hello, Des. Got here like, oh, well, I need a note from your parents, of course, and a good excuse. Nice to welcome you on board. Now, so as I say, on with that one, and I think always have a laugh. Don't be, and I can't stand these ridiculous videos with these silly sods saying, "I stood up for this copper," because most of the please are not exactly the sharpest knives in the box, and talking about the New World Order, that to them is going straight over their head, because remember, most of them are members of the moron community and support Low IQ Pride Day. So there it is. So again, I'll be interested in your comments. Now, talking about trolls, as you may or may not know, I've had 2 phone trolls, people that know my phone number, and and I've had one that continuously phoned, and it was a withheld number. You pick the phone up, you say hello, phone goes down, rings again, hello, stays silent, phone goes down, and that would go on for time. So after a while, you just ignore it. And it would ring and ring and ring and ring off. Then it ring and ring and ring again and ring off. And then I had this character doing strange computer voices. I mean, I had one, I think it was last Saturday, echoing, all that sort of satanic, weird stuff. Well, the other troll who sent me an email, I managed to trace And I found out the other troll was married and lived in Cambridgeshire. I found out their address and everything, because you can find out a lot from an email. And also the phone troll, who's been doing this for 10 years. Now, I've had several businesses. It just like water off a duck's back to me. I just find it an irritation. I mean, if you're up a ladder doing something, getting down the ladder and seeing it's a withheld number. Now, you can actually stop withheld numbers coming through. But the trouble is, as several of my friends, their number comes through as withheld because they use a different phone company. So I wouldn't be able to they wouldn't be able to phone me. You know, that's life. But this other troll who comes from Altrincham, the phone troll, I know exactly who it is, because it's now possible to trace withheld numbers. So I think this other troll from Altrincham is going to have a little surprise coming to him. But no, I think actually, joking aside, he's got a mental problem, because who on earth would sit all day devising ways of driving people up the wall? A couple of years ago, this particular character phoned me up and said, this is the police. Tomorrow morning before 10 o'clock, go to your local police station. So I said, for what reason? You will find out when you get there. So I said, well, local police station, there isn't one. And there's two that's the same distance away. Which one? Oh, anyone, doesn't matter. So I said, okay, what is the number then that's stalled him? So there was silence. I said, well, what is the case number? Please give me the case number. So I said, well, what is your name and number, please? That's not necessary. I said, yes, it is. And then I recognised the voice, and it was this character from Altrincham. He just went, put the phone down. So if he's doing it to me, he's doing it to other people. So, but as I say, I'm getting it sorted out. And I think the person's actually mentally deranged. But that's life. I feel a bit sorry for the character, really, because, you know, he's got a mental problem, and I dread to think what's happening to other people. I mean, it's an irritation. It doesn't really get me down. It just you know, it's just one of those things. Anyway, Des has got a good idea. Moronic lives matter. Good one, Des. I like that one. Moronic lives matter. Yes, I think that's good. I actually think we could actually, shall we say, congratulate the government on helping the hard of thinking, because that's what they've got in their the people who are scientific advisors, the hard of thinking, you know. And you know, oh, thanks, Des. Yeah, well, you know, I knew you was coming on, and I know you're a bit posh, so I thought I'd better try to dress a bit smart for Des, you know, because right now, on with the next subject. So I'd like to expand on that counter subversion. I think we can, and we can have a lot of laughs with it and a lot of fun. And remember, it's very difficult for them to infiltrate people that work as individuals. Don't work as a team, work as an individual. It's more frightening to them. So let's see if we can work this out for future shows. Some other ideas. And I like Des's one, moronic lives matter. There's a lot of what we can have. Low IQ Pride Day, you know. And as I say, and also we've got to mention the community. You've got to put people as a community. So we can have the moron community, the thick as shit community. There's loads of them. Now, on with the show. Now, I don't know if any of you watch Caroline Stevens, but I used to sort of regularly speak to her. And before I went solo doing this, and we're still on good talking terms, and same with Mark. And I think Caroline's gone mainly solo, and so has Mark. Hang on, Dezza says something here. Me, posh, blimey, Gough, oh, blimey, yeah, oh, anyway, 30 minutes late to the party. Sorry, again, same as Des. I need a note from your parents, Adrian. Fat lives matter. Yes, that's a good one, isn't it? Suppose smelly farts matter, don't they? Really, when you kind of think about it. Oh yes, you know these blokes that are taking a knee, they call it. These people getting down and when they call it taking the knee. I thought they could do that sort of fart appreciation day. That's what they're doing. They're getting down for fart appreciation. Think, that's a nice smell. You know? Do you realise those people are looking serious there because they've been training on cabbage and Guinness probably all morning to get it correct. Anyway, on with the show. And I've got something rather interesting. Now, I did a blog this week, and excuse me, I'm going to have to read this one out because I can't remember it. And Caroline Stevens did a very, very interesting talk on Gough Whitlam. Now, most of you are thinking, hang on, Adrian's come out with a beauty here. What's this? Dead bats matter, wine. Warhan. Yep, good. That's a good one, Adrian. Anyway. Very tasty dead bats. You think of the things that are supposed to have come from animals. AIDS was supposed to come from a monkey, wasn't it? Then you had, was it SARS from pigs? Blimey, it put me off my bacon for a while, that did. No, I don't tend to eat bats. Right. Where was I? Oh, yes. Caroline did a very interesting programme about Gough Whitlam. Now, Gough Whitlam was the Australian Prime Minister who got into power, I believe, in 1972, and in 1975 was removed from office. One of the only Prime Ministers in Australia to be removed from office. And he did a lot of good. And I was very young at the time, but I remember when he was elected into power, and one of the first things he did was to stop conscription or national service or the draft, whatever you want to call it. And I've never forgotten this. And my dad remarked on it, and he said, Gough Whitlam said, if you receive your call-up papers, ignore them and keep them as a souvenir. And I thought, what a lovely line to say that, you know, ignore anything from the government, you know. And apparently I'm not Australian, and I've heard on second and third hand information that he was a good bloke. So if you're Australian and think differently, please tell me. Anyway, he in 1975 was booted out, removed from office, forcibly. Well, so forcibly, he was removed from office. And I wrote an article on this, and here it goes. Here it is. And I thanked Caroline for her, you know, her talk that she did on Gough Whitlam. Now, and I said that he stopped military conscription, and because remember, Australia was involved in Vietnam. And I'll go on to that. Now it says here, the information that's coming out now, and this is what I wrote earlier this week, the information that's coming out now is like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. As we discover more, a picture is forming. In the UK, Harold Wilson resigned in 1976, a year after Gough Whitlam was booted out in 1975 in Australia. It was a mystery why Wilson suddenly resigned. Apparently, there was a planned overthrow of the Wilson government, of which Mountbatten would have formed an interim government. Wilson feared a military overthrow, and there's a very good play about that. And a couple of journalists recorded Wilson talking, and it's very interesting. Now, there may be a connection with Gough Whitlam and Harold Wilson's governments. Harold Wilson governments. Both prime ministers didn't play ball with the Americans regarding Vietnam. American President Johnson wanted Britain to be involved in the Vietnam War as Australia was. When Wilson and Johnson met in 1966, Johnson put pressure on Wilson to involve British forces in the Vietnam War. Wilson refused. Apparently, Johnson was very cold towards Wilson. Both of them didn't get on. Behind the scenes, although Britain was not officially involved in the Vietnam War, British special forces were. I'll tell you a little something about that after I've read this. Now, in 1973, Operation Homecoming. Oh, hang on. I've jumped. Sorry about that. Right. There is a lot of evidence that the Vietnam War was not meant to be won. It was a sustainable war. It culled American youth, mainly the poor, who were drafted. It kept the huge American arms industry in full production with continuous orders. The rich managed to dodge the draft. Now, you just think, Bill Clinton, he went to university, he dodged the draft. He was of that age. Trump dodged the draft. So did Bush. He was of there. All those three were of the right age. Now, in 1973, Operation Homecoming saw the release of American POWs from Vietnam as part of the peace negotiations implemented by President Nixon, who was allegedly, and this is the interesting bit, framed over the Watergate affair. His exit from office has two versions, the official one and what really happened. There you have it, 3 people removed, resigned and booted out of office in the 1970s, of which the real reasons are still not fully clear. Regarding the Vietnam War, the sustainable war, there seems to be a hinge pin linking removals from office in Australia, Britain and America. In 1973, Vietnam mainly released Air Force and senior ranks from rich families and well-known families. They held back 2,202 POWs as an insurance and to use as deals with the USA. To this day, those POWs are still unaccounted for. It's a mystery what happened to them. They have been airbrushed from history. Now, that's rather interesting because there has been speculation that those POWs were sent to Siberia in Russia. So nobody really knows what's happened to those POWs. But the point I'm getting at is it seems that President Nixon didn't play ball with the New World Order and brought the sustainable Vietnam War to an end, which was, of course, very unpopular with the American public. And it was said that a lot of people saw their sons killed on the battlefield before they were officially notified. And they saw their sons killed on the battlefield on television. And hello, my telephone is ringing and it's unplugging time. Here we go. Right. Now, so Nixon was unpopular with the New World Order. Wilson didn't play ball and didn't actually send British troops en masse to the Vietnam War. And of course, Gough Whitlam virtually told America to get stuffed. I don't think Australian conscripts were sent to Vietnam. I think it was only regulars. Australian viewers will be able to clarify me on that, but I think it was only regulars, but I could be wrong on that. Okay, so those 3 didn't play ball with the New World Order. And if you go on to Red Ice Creations, there's a chap on there that says that Nixon was framed. And a lot of what we've been told about him is not quite true. So quite interesting. So I'd be interested to know what you think about that. Now, let's have a look in chat, see what we've got to say here. You're reminded me of the late David Nixon. Remember him? Yes, I do, actually. I actually worked with a lady that knew him. She worked in the same office as him before he became famous. She's an elderly lady, I hasten to add. And she said he was the nicest man you could ever wish to meet. And he went out and used to buy everybody's lunch for them. Really nice chap. I was living in Australia during Whitlam's premiership. That's interesting, Des. Gough vowed to open up the American spy base in the Australian desert. He never did in the end. Yes. Oh, God, I wish I could remember that name. Should have made a note of it. Nixon, a great magician. He was, actually. He was a very nice character as well. Very nice person, on stage and off. I've heard a lot about him, and all I've heard is praise. And it's sad when he died. I've actually got, I got this for Christmas when I was a kid, the David Nixon Magic Book. Mind you, I never really liked magicians very much. I found them smug. Not him, but you know, a lot of them smug gits. You know, so all this. I was more interested in watching the scantily clad ladies that assisted them, because I used to note that the worse the magician, the more scantily clad the assistant was. So it took your mind off of what they were doing, and you look at the young lady with. But I don't think David Nixon had a scantily clad young lady with him. Anyway, here we go. It says the British were in the Vietnam. That's right. British Vietnam in the Vietnam War at the end of World War II, before handing it back to the French. That's right. And they reckoned that if the British would have stayed there for another, I think it was 3 months, the Vietnam War would have never happened, because they would have destroyed the Viet Cong, and they were on their way to doing it, as Britain did in Malaya in the 50s, now Malaysia. They put the communists down, and they handed French Indochina, as it was known then, before it was known as Vietnam, over to the French, who were not trained in guerrilla warfare. That's another story. Very interesting. There's a very interesting YouTube documentary about that. Right. There's your something. You are wrong. Thanks, Des. Put me right. Australian contracts were sent to Vietnam. Thank you very much, Des. I stand corrected. I didn't think they were, but you're right. Australian conscripts were sent to Vietnam. I know. I was in Oz at the time. Thanks, Des, for putting me right. I know a lot of Australians came over here to avoid the draft. And they came to Europe to avoid the draft. And in the 60s and 70s, a lot of them were working in offices over here, and that carried on into the 70s and 80s, actually, although the draft was ended by Gough Whitlam in the early 70s, I hasten to add. But no, I mean, the Australians used to do their tour of Europe in their camper vans and sell them at Earl's Court. And but a lot of them in the 60s came over here to avoid the draft. So thanks for that, Des. I stand corrected. They were used in Vietnam. Thank you. Right. And something very interesting about Vietnam. Now, I did a lot of research about years ago about the veterans' children of World War II, because I found when my dad did his book, I started to get letters from people who were the sons and daughters of veterans who had suffered shell shock, because in my dad's book he mentions that the children appear to be affected. I've had nervous problems and in my life, which I dealt with, and in Australia they did a survey, and they discovered that now I'm doing this off the top of my head, the suicide rate amongst Vietnam veterans' children was 3 times higher than the national average. So it's quite something. And I got talking to a girl whose father was in the Far East during the war and suffered shell shock, and she had terrible nerves as a child, and she was sent to a special school, and 80%, 80, of the children in this special school who also had nervous problems, their father or mother had suffered shell shock. Because I say mother, because remember there was bombing campaigns during the war, and civilians got shell shock as well. So that's a little something, a little bit of interest there. Now, what we got here? We got Adrian. Yummy, yummy. I love being vaccinated with dead bat juices spliced up with a few extra chemicals added to make the experience more deadly. My dad is called Bill, and he taught me that risking my life is the right thing to do to save the planet. Or Bill Gates is that? Right. Thanks, Des again. You come to the rescue. Blimey, Encyclopedia Britannica there. Pine Gap in Australia. That's the place, Pine Gap. Yeah. If you go over to Caroline Stevens, Seeking the Truth, she does a brilliant one on Gough Whitlam. I would say it's one of the best ones she's done so far. It really is. Right. What and all. Heard of David? Oh yeah, I know David Irving, not personally, but he's gone out the limelight recently. I think the people who are not allowed to criticise have actually got to him, haven't they? But I'll be going on to David Irving a little bit later when I'm going to do a 76th commemoration of D-Day and let you into something that few people probably know. Now, David Irving said something that my father said. I'm not sure if my father said it before David Irving, but I don't think he knew of David Irving. No, what's this? Des, yeah. I would say that. Yeah. I agree with you. Some people say he's lost the plot recently. That might have come with age. I don't know. But I've actually seen a lot of his videos. I've read quite a lot about him and that. And he's a very meticulous historian. He really does know his stuff. And apparently the film Downfall, which was about Hitler's bunker, was based on his book about Hitler. And because David Irving, see, what gets me is history. History is written by the victors. Excuse me, I've got a seat problem. Anyway, that's better. It's written by the victors. That's why French history books have got so many blank pages. Sorry, France, nothing personal. But really, when I was a kid, I used to see these American films about the American Civil War, and we learned that the Confederates were the nasty people, and the Unions were the good guys, from up north. And the Confederates had these slaves, and Abraham Lincoln stopped slavery. Can you smell something? Yeah, it's bullshit, because Abraham Lincoln, if he hadn't been assassinated, had a plan to get all the slaves of African origin, put them into boats, and then literally dump them on the South American coast where there's jungles. That was his plan. And if he hadn't been assassinated, he may have, started to do that. So he wasn't such a nice man after all. And the American Civil War wasn't really about slavery, because the northern states had slaves as well. So you find out that, again, history is written by the victors, and the truth is starting to come out. And I recently saw that Robert E. Lee's statue has been kicked over, and Robert E. Lee, I think he had slaves, but he stopped having them, whereas in the north, several northern states still had slaves. And remember, there was southern units in the American Civil War that were entirely volunteers, black Americans. Few people realize that as well. So that's quite interesting. Anyway, this is just written here. I've been on one of, that's David Irving's talks. Yes. And Adrian, David is still active. Oh, I'm pleased to hear that. He's getting on a little bit now. Right, now, D-Day anniversary. This is another blog, so excuse me, I'm going to read this again, that I wrote. Okay, and this was on the 76th anniversary of D-Day. Now, people often say they're woke to what's going on when 9/11 happened. Well, I was very much awake. That's for other people to notice, but I believe I was very, very much awake, because my father was very much awake. because before World War II, he had a blind father, and he was a carer for his blind father. He used to lead him around, but he also used to read the newspapers to him. So he had and remember, there's quite a few independent newspapers in those days. Weren't all owned by a minority of conglomerates, and you could get quite a wide view of things. So he knew roughly what was going on before the war started. But my dad was at the right age at the wrong time. Humbly, at the age of 20, he was conscripted in 1939, November 1939, into the forces. But what I've got to say here about D-Day, because my dad had previously been in the full siege of Malta, where they almost starved to death. They went from there to on the invasion of Sicily, first ones in, Italy, first ones in, and D-Day, first ones in. And that opens a question about euthanasia, because the initial force that went in to D-Day, my dad's lot, were unfit, and they actually got new pay books which said that they were A1 fit without medical examination, and a lot of them were patched up wounded, and they were in a terrible state because Montgomery expected them to get completely wiped out, but were there to soak up enemy fire to gain a foothold for following troops. So that's something that people don't realise. But anyway, this is my blog that I wrote last Saturday. On D-Day, my dad was among the first assault wave on Gold Beach Jig Section. He was a conscript in the 2nd Devonshire Regiment, 231 Brigade, Frontline Intelligence. The Frontline Intelligence section had a very high casualty rate, as they often had to go ahead of the front line behind enemy lines. They generally had a higher IQ than most, some were academics, and many could speak fluent German. Actually, they called my dad's lot the dead and the dying, because there were so many, the casualty rate was so high. Now, before my dad died, he said if only he and his colleagues had known then, and this was on D-Day, how this country would turn out. If they had known, they would have all thrown down their rifles and given up. Now that is what David Irving said. David Irving said, if those in the landing craft, I can't repeat it verbatim, but it was on the lines of, if those the landing crafts would have known how this country would turn out, they wouldn't have gone 10 yards up the beach. But it's very similar to what my dad said. Now, my dad said that whilst facing the humiliation of being means tested, yes, means tested, to pay for care that he had already paid for in national insurance contributions. Dad and many veterans felt ashamed to have fought in a war on which the propaganda lies of that time are still believed today and hyped up for each generation. Dad detested the British Legion, never wore his impressive array of medals, and was irritated by military exhibitionists, some of whom were never in the war. In our view, and this is my dad and myself, the British Legion is nothing more than a benevolent government propaganda agency whose job is or was to project and promote an image of veterans and military exhibitionism that's rather like a religious cult and best suits successive governments and lets them off the hook. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting, hopefully. In 1939, Britain was under no military threat when it declared war on Germany. Using the excuse of a Polish treaty with the UK, the true reason for the declaration of war at that time and to this day remains deliberately unclear and glossed over. Britain had and has treaties with many other countries, but has ignored them when they were attacked by a hostile country. The Chinese invasion of Tibet is a typical example. Now, putting the Polish nonsense aside, that was really an excuse. The question remains, why did Britain really declare war on Germany when Britain was under no military threat whatsoever? Now, briefly, Chamberlain was Prime Minister, or Prime mince or months or whatever, in 1939, although I think he was quite well liked. But Churchill was waiting in the wings and became the unelected, remember, unelected Prime Minister in 1940. Prior to World War II, Germany abolished usury, printed debt-free currency, and went from bust to economic boom almost overnight. Abolishing usury put shockwaves through the international banking cartel, who financed the media and newspapers. Prior to World War II, Churchill was in debt to the sum of £19,500, a large sum in those days. A secret benefactor from the City of London cleared his debts. In 1940, Churchill was suddenly thrust into power. Germany was destroyed in 1945. Along with it was a warning to any other country that strayed from the international banking cartel and decided to abolish usury and print its own debt-free currency. Thus, debt slavery for future generations was maintained, and the international banking cartel could take a sigh of relief that their usury scam remained intact. Maybe I've given a clue to why there are two versions of World War II. The financial cartel-backed Hollywood version and what really happened. Sadly, people are brainwashed by the Hollywood version and, as with most religious cults, aggressively defend the propaganda they have been brainwashed to believe. Anyway, I've just said at the end, bless you, Dad, my hero, and one of many who spoke the truth and in doing so told people what they didn't want to hear. Dad was also a victim of the post-war government-directed pensions fraud that has been skillfully airbrushed from history. And there it concludes. So, really, when you say the truth, people accuse you of all kinds of things. No. I like people. I like truth, though. And the truth, however ugly and untasteful it is, needs to come through. And the truth is that, in my view, and from what I've researched, World War II was fought over maintaining usury. Simple as that. But that's for another show. I've just touched briefly on this. Anyway, it's time for a dirty joke. And so please send children out of the room. Put your fingers in the ears of anybody that's a little sensitive, maybe. If you're into political correctness, please switch off now. But oh, hang on, we got another comment from Adrian. Mustn't miss him out. What have we got here? Oh, hang on, we got Des. Was it Buffalo Soldiers? I think that was when we was talking about the American Civil War, wasn't it, Des? I think. There's Britain. Me and my young son met David in a. Oh, he's talking about David Irving in a hotel in Peterborough in 2013. There was a journalist sat next to us, and he mentioned us in the next day's edition of his newspaper. Oh, I hope it wasn't one of Rupert Murdoch's comics. Anyway, on with the dirty joke. And finally, right, a health inspector goes into a cake shop and there's flies all over the place. There's all stains up the wall. It's in a terrible state. And the health inspector says, I'm terribly sorry. He said, if you don't buck up your ideas, he said, I'm afraid I'm going to have to close this place down in 3 days. He said, because this does not pass the health regulations. It's absolutely disgusting. It's filthy. So the place said, oh, terribly sorry, sir. He said, we've been rushed off our feet. He said, and we've let things lax a little bit. But I assure you, we are generally spotlessly clean. He said, well, I'll be inspecting soon. So I want to see that you're up to standards, you see. So anyway, 3 days later, the health inspector walks in and that place is spotless. It's like a palace. You could eat off the floor. It's crisp. Everything is absolutely glistening. You'd never seen anything like it. The inspector says, my word, you've certainly done a good job there. Here, he said, I'm very impressed. He said, well, we normally like to keep high standards, but he said, we were a bit overworked, So he said, well, he said, I'm so pleased with the, he said, I'm not going to close you down. He said, do you mind if I have one of your donuts? He said, yeah, I'll buy you one, bite off of you. Certainly, sir. So bloke, the health inspector, just about to grab a donut by his hand. I said, hang on. And the chap behind the counter gets a pair of tongs and hands it to the health inspector. He says, you've got to handle the donuts with tongs. Oh, okay. So he gets a bag. It's self-service, see. He puts a donut in the bag and hands the tongs back to him. So he says, so yeah, the health inspector scoffs into this donut. It's delicious. So he can't help noticing, this health inspector, that all the people that work there, all the blokes, have got a piece of string dangling down from their flies. So the chap behind the counter notices the health inspector sort of looking down. He said, oh, he says, you're wondering about a bit of string hanging down from our flies. So the health inspector says, yeah. He said, I didn't want to say anything. He said, well, he said, we're so, strict with hygiene. He said, when you go to the lavatory, he said, so we don't handle our flies, he said, we use the string to pull our fly buttons down, you see. Sorry, fly zippers down. So the inspector says, yeah. He said, that's one thing that puzzles me. He said, how do you get the old fella out? He said, have a piece. He said, that's where the tongs come in. And on that note, thank you very much for joining me tonight. And I hope you can join me next week, same time, 8 o'clock. Now on Mondays, not Thursdays, it's Mondays now. And if you prefer Mondays, please tell me. Thank you very much for joining me in chat. Without you in chat room, well, the program wouldn't go along so smoothly. So thank you very much. And it also keeps me a bit sharp, with information and that. Thank you very much. And if you could subscribe and hit that bell, which reminds you when I'm coming on air. And of course, if you're on Facebook or anything else like that, if you could copy and share, I'll be most grateful. And here's wishing you a very good week coming. And I look forward to seeing you again next Monday. And thank you very much, and good night.